what is up YouTube? Welcome to today's video, and it has been quite a while since I decided to make a YouTube video, but I kind of felt obligated since a lot of people were asking me about Lightning Arrow that followed the guide last time. Now last league I did start Lightning Arrow over Venom Gyre purely because I wanted to try something different, and this league I'm going to be doing the exact same thing, so you can probably follow along on my stream. Now, the reason behind choosing Lightning Arrow is that even with its huge nerf, and I do think that at the top end, Lightning Arrow probably suffered a roughly 50% damage nerf or more with the removal of Avenging Cascade and also the removal of Crucible Tree from the bows. However, Lightning Arrow was really that good last league, and even when I played it unoptimally, it still finished all the content. It had insane clear, and I do think that it is one of the best mapping skills bar none. Now, if you wonder if you should follow along the build, last league I did play it. This is on day 2. Now this character is built for farming maps, and this is the gear I was able to obtain on the second day. I had Omni and everything, a Lionized Fall, and I got to level 96 without any sort of 5-way. So this build is definitely able to get you to where you want to be. Now, there is no League Start meta change in 3.22. More or less everything is the same, but there will be a slight meta shift later on with all the new support gems and tattoos, and this build could change a lot with tattoos. Now, like I said, there is no Crucible anymore, so the bow is going to be a lot worse. This bow you see over here with the crazy Crucible is not going to exist, and it's roughly a 30 to 40% damage nerf on your bow. Now, this is one of the best scaling league starters. Sooner or later, you're going to get the single target damage to instantly kill every single Uber Pinnacle boss. Their playstyle is really simple compared to Venom Gyre or Cold Daw or any sort of build that requires a lot of different skills. You put your Berserk on left click, and then you just shoot Lightning Arrow, and you put down your Artillery Ballista totems every now and then to kill a tanky rare or boss. Now, the single target is solved with Artillery Ballista. Lightning Arrow has always been known to be a very, very good clear skill. Now, the reason why Lightning Arrow is such a good clear skill is because the mechanics of the skill allows it to kind of shotgun in a sense if there's a lot of enemies nearby. So what Lightning Arrow does is it converts 50% of Fizz to lightning damage. It hits up to 3 additional enemies near the target. So if there's like 4 enemies and you hit them with the lightning arrows, all of them are going to get hit multiple times because each enemy that gets hit is going to hit the 3 nearby enemies. Now, another nice thing about it is you shock the enemies as though dealing 290% more damage. And this means that you'll get higher shock values, so you can get up to like 40% shock or maybe 30% shock on even a tough boss. Now, Vol Lightning Arrow was the thing that was added last league. A lot of people asked, how good is Vol Lightning Arrow? And the answer is sadly, the skill kind of sucks. I would a lot of times prefer to run Vol Haste or Vol Grace. So you would usually put Lightning Arrow at 2120 because getting a Vol Lightning Arrow at 2120 is a lot more expensive. Now, there is one use case of Vol Lightning Arrow, and it is during early league. It does provide a significant single target boost, especially when your attack speed is a little bit lower. So if you could get it early league, it is not too bad because you can use it on an Essence or you can use it on a map boss to try to instantly kill it. And I was using Vol Lightning Arrow a lot to kill the Essences that were tanky at league start. Now, for single target, we use Artillery Ballista Totem. Last league, I did experiment with Lightning Arrow Ballista Totem, and it was kind of a bad idea. So, or not a bad idea, it was not optimal compared to how good Artillery Ballista is. So what Artillery Ballista does is it fires a sequence of arrows into the air. And you can have up to 4 maximum totems without more investment to totems on the skilled passive tree. Now, the thing about this build is we're not really investing that much into totems, yet Artillery Ballista will be the main source of our single target damage. So, if you read the line, Ballista Totem fires a sequence of arrows into the air, this line is very important because when stuff in PoE fire something sequentially, that means every single arrow or projectile has a chance to hit the boss. So some people did some calculations. The right way to consider the artillery ballista damage is to do your number of totems times the total projectile count you have divided by 2. So usually we have 4 totems, and you can see it here in the calculations. Artillery ballista, you go to your projectile count. Where is the projectile count? But here you can see that totem limit is 4, and then the projectile count is 6. So you should go up to 10 actually. I actually don't know why it's like this. But oh wait, this is because I don't have the skill points. So basically when you get the skill points from your tree, so let's go to crit swap rage. So there's a lot of different sections on the pop here. And this skill section here, crit swap rage, item swap. Or maybe it's not. Wait, let's see here. Oh wait, there we go. So you can see the calculations increases up to 10. So when we have 10 on the projectile count, it becomes 4 times 10 divided by 2, which is 5 projectiles, which equals 20 count. Now pop damage is generally a little bit inflated because of totem uptime. So what I like to do is I lowered the count a little bit to 18. You can also change it to like 16. It really comes down to what you want to put in the thing. It doesn't change how it's going to feel in the game. The number you put in here is just what you can use to compare your damage. It doesn't really reflect what the actual DPS will be in game. Now, I've kind of broken down how you actually progress this character into different sections for this guide. And you do level with non-crit precise technique. Now, leveling with this build is super fast. I was actually able to do a leveling run not too long ago, or yesterday, and I did finish the campaign in 3 hours 42 minutes, and I have not even played PoE in quite a while, and I'm not even the fastest speedrunner or anything. Now, there is a little bit of a choice you can make. Some people do like to use Rain of Arrows, and the reason behind that is we don't get the 2 additional projectiles from the passive skill tree right away. So we do use Rain of Arrows as it doesn't scale that hard with the amount of arrows. However, I do know that most people like to play Lightning Arrow straight off the bat, so I do prefer myself also to use Lightning Arrow as soon as I get it at level 12. Now, at the start, we're going to be leveling with Precise Technique, and this is non-crit. So Precise Technique works by having 40% more attack damage if your accuracy rating is higher than maximum life. So you want to make sure while leveling that your accuracy rating is always higher than your life pool. Now, after you get through the campaign, you want to swap over to crit, or after you get through the maps. Now, Precise Technique can take you all the way through the Void Stones if you really want to. So the way you should approach this pop is you need to select where you are in the build progression. So if you're in early mapping Precise Technique, you select that. And then you have to go to the skill set over here and select Precise Technique. And then for items, you want to select Precise Technique, because I made a different item set for each character. It took quite a while to do this. Now, when you want to swap over to crit, you do need a bow with crit. So when you go to crit swap, you need to see that your bow has some sort of crit chance. You can have to craft it on, or it can be a mod on the bow. And then afterwards, we want to do crit swap with the rage setup. Now, I did put this as a separate progression because the rage setup does change up the skill gems you use, and it also is an expensive item. I do think that rage setup could cost quite a bit, like 1 or 2 divines for Vol's Vision and Comb Spirit. But it is undoubtedly better, and you should try to go for the rage setup as soon as possible. Now, so you can see there's a lot of different sections, and I also even included a crit swap rage with Magic Find. So if you want to have a little bit of a Magic Find character, at the start I put in some cheap, affordable Magic Find items. And then there's also a Soul Thirst setup that gives you Soul Eater, and this does rely on getting the tattoos. So it's just a little bit of a basic framework if you want to follow it. Now, the Ascendancy is always going to be Deadeye. Everyone always asks, what's the Ascendancy? It's Deadeye. Now, for the first Ascendancy node, we want to take the Tailwind node over here, and this grants us the action speed, which will make it feel a lot faster as soon as you get the node. It gives you 20% action speed, meaning 20% faster on all your actions. Now, next up, we take Far Shot. Far Shot's used because it's such a more damage multiplier if you stand roughly 70 units away from the mob, and it helps a lot with the returning projectile support gem and also hitting map bosses if we just stand far away. And then next up, we get Endless Munitions. We do know projectiles scale our artillery ballista damage, and also it helps us with our clear on Lightning Arrow and allows us to drop LMP as a gem link. Now, next up, we have Focal Point. Now, Focal Point is just a huge amount of single target. It makes Sniper's Mark a lot better. And it also has a little bit of an added benefit where it makes you take 25% less damage from other enemies near your marked enemy. And this is kind of a little bit of a defensive layer because this build is very squishy. There's not much defensive layers outside of evasion. Now, Bandits, we have a little bit of an option. A lot of people opt for 2 passive points straight off the bat. But I do think that a Lyra is probably your better bet. But you do have to save 20 regrets. So it's really up to you. Do you want to spend the 20 regrets later on? A Lyra is super helpful because crit multi is kind of hard to come by early game when we want to do the crit swap. And also, the 15 resist is a lifesaver. This build is kind of hard to get resist, especially early game. It helps out your gearing quite a bit. Now, the major Pantheon, what we'll use is Soul of the Brine King. So Soul of the Brine King grants us freeze immunity. It grants us reduced effective chill, and it also grants us stun avoidance. So this is the major Pantheon we'll always be going for. Now, the minor Pantheon, we're going to use the Soul of Garou Khan, and this gives us 60% reduced effective shock and blind/maim immunity. So you can see right here, from our Pantheons alone, we can pretty much cover most of the downsides of the ailments. So if the shock, we could use the minor Pantheon combined with reduced effective shock as a suffix on a flask or a craft on a ring or gloves. And for the major Pantheon, we get the reduced effective chill and freeze. And sooner or later, you're going to get the movement speed boots with cannot be chilled. And that will help you out with the main ailments that are super dangerous. Now, for burning, you'll probably have to use a flask or something. But those are the main ailments that kills everyone. So you do have to wait until your Pantheons before you can deal with the ailments. Now, the skill tree, I'm going to go over some of the choices you can make. Now, you can see right here, I did include a lot of different sections from the skill tree. So straight off the bat, for leveling, you always want to go for Precise Technique. You want to get this Onslaught cluster while leveling because Onslaught just feels super, super nice. And you want to get this Elemental Mastery. Oh, wait, this is actually wrong. So good thing I actually looked at the pod before I actually gave it to you guys. So this thing should be Elemental Inversion. So you can see right here, it actually says a 50% damage increase. And that's how much of an increase it is. So I had it right on this thing. So after you get the Elemental Mastery, the Precise Technique, and the Bow Mastery right here, some people choose the green sockets for accuracy. I like to use the Blink Arrow and Mirror Arrow, have 100% increased cooldown recovery rate because you are spamming this Blink Arrow skill over and over again while leveling. So during leveling, I do advise you to take this mastery. And as you can see here, we try to rush to get the projectiles because having the additional arrows will give us 2 additional arrows on a tree and 2 from the Ascendancy, and that gives us 5 arrows total. And that allows us to run Lightning Arrow without having to use LMP or GMP, which drastically reduces our damage. Now, we do try to get some little bit of move speed out of the tree over here. And the reason we want to go over this way right here is because of the 20 strength and int node. This build is extremely attribute starved, especially if you want to use auras like Purity of Elements or Wrath or even Anger or maybe even Determination. Attributes, strength, and int are going to be a huge problem. Now, as we go here, the instant leech node is how you solve all of your mana issues. It also gives you a little bit of a pseudo life gain on hit feeling for your skill, and it is super, super nice. Now, the Mark Mastery over here is a very, very efficient cluster. You could also use this to get frenzy charges if you don't want to use Blood Rage. And one of the most important parts that people kind of get confused with is how many accuracy clusters to take. Now, accuracy mastery, you have this one right here. There's also another accuracy mastery that grants you 500 accuracy rating. Now, one of the most important things is to adjust your skill tree based on your hit chance. You want to make sure your hit chance is 100%, and you can solve this by taking points on the skill tree or getting accuracy on your gear, like your rings or your helmet or even your amulet. So that's something else to keep in mind. Now we do take charisma. This is one of our aura clusters, and the reason we take this is so we can run 250% auras, and then we could also kind of have a different aura. Now I did list every single aura that you can run, and these are the main options. So you can run haste, you can run purity of elements, or you can run dread banner. And dread banner would take the place of precision. So if you don't have the accuracy, you need to run either precision or get the accuracy clusters on the tree. And if you have the leftover mana, you run dread banner because that's a huge defensive boost, and I'll explain more later on. And of course, we get the spell suppression clusters over here. So right here, you can see we get the spell suppression. Now, one thing to note is that you can maybe drop some of the spell suppression if you have 100% spell suppression. So you have to make sure that you have 100% spell suppression or close to it. And evasion mastery is also something that you could drop, and it does require you to have your helmet, your body armor, your gloves, and boots to all have evasion rating. Another thing that you should keep in mind is that there's also the life mastery here. If you don't have life on your body armor, you can take this mastery and it gives you 15% increased life. Wind Dancer is a no we do end up taking because it grants you a lot of damage reduction, and we are an evasion based character, so most of the time we will not be hit, and we'll have this 20% less damage taken. So overall, you can see for the passive skill tree, there's a lot of different options. There's some people who even come down to the onslaught area over here instead of foregoing this top area. Now, the reason I take the top area in my tree is because I want to have a higher life pool. Since we are an evasion character, we can see with our setup, we're running around 93% chance to evade. Now, 93% chance to evade means that our life pool is extremely important, so we don't want to get one-shotted. So I am running around 138% life on a tree. And this upper area is not the worst in the sense that it gives you a little bit of strength here, Dexin in here, and Dexin in. And I did mention how important attributes were going to be. So that's the reason why I use this top section over here. You could also drop this section and get the jewels over here. And then there's a lot of jewel sockets. You could even go a cluster jewel route. So what I'm trying to provide you is a framework for the skill tree and how to think about the choices you're going to make, instead of trying to blindly copy it, because there's a lot of different choices. If you're missing attributes, you can take the strength and int nodes over here. And this stuff, I do prefer to use Pierce instead of taking the chain ascendancy. I think this is a better use because the chain means that you can't get focal point and you can't get far shot or one of those choices. And far shot is way more important for damage than anything else. And lastly, I forgot this thing right here. Flask Mastery is something we do take because this thing is pretty much 100% increased flash charges gained while mapping, because all the enemies you kill are going to have an elemental ailment. And it also gives you a lot of your flash duration, and it gives you flask effect, which is super, super nice. And lastly, this note over here for the projectile mastery or bow mastery, our projectile speed is pretty much going to be % damage. So we do take this thing over here. That gives you 30% increased projectile speed, and projectiles gain damage as they travel farther, which synergizes really, really well with our far shot node. So hopefully that explains everything. Try to look at the skill tree and understand why you're taking some of the nodes, and try to understand the importance of getting 100% chance to hit. Now, skill gems are going to change a lot. This is another thing that you have to look at it and try to understand why these choices are being made. So for precise technique, so I'm just going to go over the crit setup. So the crit setup, you're going to use Lightning Arrow, Mirage Archer, and Trinity. Now these are going to be the main links you'll always be using. And Returning Projectiles is a new skill gem. This is the new Vengeance Cascade. And I do think it is still the best support gem. So you can run Returning Projectiles in the 4th link. In the 5th link, I would probably run Inspiration or Elemental Damage of Attacks or Added Cold Damage. You run Inspiration if you have mana issues. You run Elemental Damage of Attacks if it's better than Added Cold Damage. Now, Added Cold Damage will be better when you have less flat damage on your gear and bow. So the more flat damage you have, the less impactful additional flat damage will be. Now, the last link, you can use increased crit damage. You can also even use elemental damage of attacks. And that does come down to how much crit multi do you end up having. Now, Artillery Ballista, I'm running Artillery Ballista, Focus Ballista, increased crit damage, elemental damage of attacks, elemental focus, elemental penetration, or inspiration. Now, crit damage is only for crit builds, so if you're trying to level, I'd probably do Artillery Ballista, Focus Ballista when you get it. You can also throw in added cold damage. You can use elemental damage of attacks, elemental focus, or even inspiration. It really comes down to the colors you have for your links, and it comes down to whether you're crit or non-crit. But Focus Ballista makes it so you have to attack, and then your totems will shoot. Now, for the movement skills, I greatly prefer Blink Arrow Frost Blink. You can cancel the end of the animation of Blink Arrow with Frost Blink. You can also use Flame Dash. The Flame Dash does give you a little bit more charges. It is the preferable bossing skill that I will use because it has the additional charges. Now, Mana Forge Arrow is something new that was added last time. Now, the way that Mana Forge Arrow works is that it procs a bow skill. Now, you do use Frenzy, and this gives you Frenzy charges. Some people try to use Ensnaring Arrow. However, Ensnaring Arrow does not work with Sniper's Mark, so it won't be working on the single target mobs, since Sniper's Mark will make it split off, and it won't actually come and hit the boss. So that's something that I generally don't think you can use, but maybe you can find a way to actually make it hit the boss. I do think that this is useful. If you have a source of frenzy generation, you will get the frenzy generation from maybe the Mark Mastery over here. Now, Power Charge on crit is what you'll use if you have the crit setup, because you need power charges for crit chance. And Culling Strike. So Culling Strike is something that you only run if you're running if you're not using High Reach Truth. So High Reach Truth makes it so that your bow attacks have Culling Strike. So this is not needed. So you can see a lot of the skill gems are dependent on the gear set you're using and how many links you have and how many spare sockets you have. Now, buffs, you have Blood Rage. Now, Blood Rage is not needed once you're using, or not once you have the Frenzy Charge generation from Mana Forge Arrow. I do prefer to use Blood Rage while leveling because it does provide a little bit of attack speed boost. And Berserk is only needed if you have the Crit Rage setup. Now, Mark on Hit Sniper's Mark is always needed. It's how we automate our Sniper's Mark. Now, Castle and Damage taken in Immortal Call, you can pretty much consider this the guard skill section. So, Immortal Call is super nice. However, the bad part about it is you have to use 2 gem links. So later on, when we don't have the gem links, I do prefer for the crit rage setup, since we have to use Berserk to proc our rage, we use a Steel Skin. You can either left click the Steel Skin, or if you're good at the game, you can manually cast the Steel Skin. And it's actually kind of important because you can press it when you open an Essence, and this will stop you from dying a lot. When you pop a Legion, for instance, when it's dangerous, when it all comes alive, sometimes you can use this. So this is a very dependent thing. Some people don't even run the guard skill. It really comes down to your preference with how you want to do your defenses and how many sockets you have left. Now, your auras, you can run Anger and Haste, are probably the best damage auras, and Clear Speed auras. Now, Grace is what I would prefer for a more endgame setup, because it does allow you to get to that 92-95% evasion, which is super important for feeling survivable. Determination, I probably wouldn't run unless you really care about the armor. Purity of Elements is a very interesting aura. I would prefer to run Purity of Elements early game until I got my ailment immunity sorted out, because it does provide a lot of help. Because you don't want to get frozen, you don't want to get shocked and die if you don't roll your flask. It does provide that kind of like a lazy approach, and if you don't care so much about that top speed. Now, Purity of Elements does, I think it's a 50% aura. So we run 2 50% auras. We have Charisma, so we have an extra aura we can run. Now, you can run Precision. However, you can drop Precision if you have enough accuracy to get a 100% hit chance. And the other aura you can run is Dread Banner. Now, Dread Banner is nice because it makes enemies have less hit around you. So you can see it brings up your evasion slightly. And it's just a free aura you can run. However, it does require a gem socket. So you can see a lot of these things will come down to how socket starved you are. If you don't have a 6 link right away, for instance, and you have 6 sockets and a 5 link on your body armor, you're going to have an extra aura to run. So you can see right here, I pretty much put down the selections you have. So you don't run all these auras. There's only, you can only run 3 auras total. So lightning arrow, you can choose the links that you want. Item rarities only for magic finding. Berserk and steel skin. When you're in the rage setup, you need to have berserk, but you'll see in the other setup, I am going to be running cast on damage, taking a mortal call, and sniper's mark on hits always going to be used. And this part right here, you can see crit rage setup has the culling strike right here, and then the crit swap, because you have Hyries, it won't have the culling. And you can try maybe using a snaring arrow instead of frenzy. However, I would not recommend this. Now, blink arrow is always going to be used because it's our movement skill. And for the crit setup right here, you can see precision won't be checked, so it shouldn't actually be here. And it's going to be from our amulet. So you can see Hyries Troop right here grants us the level 30 precision skill. So technically, we save a skill gem socket for that. So just keep in mind that socket pressure is high on this build, and it comes down to what guard skill you want to use, and your skill tree, and how many auras you want to run. Now, the gearing, this is the easy part, actually. So, bow, when you're precise technique, you want to have a quick bow. You don't care about the base crit. So, you use a thicket bow. So, thicket bow has, I think, a 1.6 attack speed. I think spine bow is slightly slower, but it has a higher base crit. So, you can see the crit chance is 8.71% on the spine bow. So, when you want to make a bow, you want attack speed, you want flat elemental damage, and you want critical strike chance once you want to go crit. So you can see these are the flat mods, and attack speed crafted is super good on bows. So if you can get the crit chance, so you pretty much just have to essence spam it. So how you craft a bow is use essences for the flat elemental damage. You can do it for the attack speed. You can even do it for the critical strike chance. So you spam it, you try to get 2 of the other mods, and then craft on the other mod. Now if you get lucky and you get 3 mods total, then you'll have a nicer bow. Now, the nice part about the craft for the bow, if you go crit chance bow, is that you can get strength in, and like I said, strength in is a huge problem. Now, the quiver, next up, we have the feathered arrow quiver. This gives us a projectile speed base, and this is important because it helps out our clear and also helps out our returning projectile gem. Now, I forgot to mention, returning projectiles in the PoB is incorrect because it doesn't have the skill gem, but I will try to update the PoB with the returning projectiles gem. Now, you on the quiver, you want max life, you want critical strike multi if you're a crit build already. Additional arrow is going to be really, really rare to get. Attack speed is also nice. Damage with bow skills, elemental damage of attacks. There's a lot of different stuff you can get on the quiver that's good. And lots of different options. You could even buy a quiver on the trade site, but there's no real unique quiver that provides a huge spike. Now, body armor, I kind of prefer the Restless Defiance. Now, I don't really know if it's going to be the best setup, but the Restless Defiance is really nice early game because it gives you the endurance charge, which helps out our physical damage reduction a little bit. It helps it out with Immortal Call, and it also gives you a lot of base armor and evasion along with the increased onslaught effect. But you could also use Hyries Ire. Hyries Ire is probably going to be a 6-7 divine item, so that's going to be a little bit later on. Now, there does come a point where a 6-link evasion chest could be a lot cheaper. You can go buy a base on the market and spam some essences, try to craft it out, and it might end up being a better option because it's kind of hard to get a 6-link the rest of those, or more expensive. So on the chest piece for the rare, you can get life, you can get spell suppression. There's also the Gravicious craft, which is Fizz is taken as elemental damage. And this craft is super important since we have almost no physical damage reduction. And you can also get resist, or you can get attributes. Now, Eldritch Implicit, you generally want to do aura effect. So you want to get the aura effect for your specific aura, like Grace or Anger. And then you want to get aura effect overall. Now, helmet, we want the Vol's Vision for the rage setup. Now, before the Vol's Vision, we could run a rare helmet. And getting the Eldritch Implicit with reduced mana cost of attacks will help out a lot. And also the reservation efficiency will allow us to run a higher level precision. Now, if we don't have the Eldritch Implicit, we have to lower our precision. Now, this does allow you to run the level 30 precision without any real issues. But when you get to the rage setup, we use Vol's Vision because it gives you 400 life, and it's not really that bad of an item. It has 10% max life, but you have to make sure items aren't corrupted. For the enchant, you want Berserk buff effect or lightning arrow damage, or lightning arrow hits 2 nearby enemies. It's going to cost like probably 4 or 5 divines at the start, but it's kind of worth it. But you have to judge what's your best upgrade. Now the gloves, Comb Spirit is the best. What Comb Spirit does is it converts your life recovery over to rage regeneration. So you can see right here we have 7.7 rage regen, and that's from the 400 life regen from the helmet. You'll see right here with the belt, we also have more life regen. So that is super, super important. This is the best setup. Having Berserk will feel a lot better. Now, for people wondering how good is Berserk, well, it is pretty insane. So you can see right here, Berserk damage is 31% more damage. And most importantly, the move speed goes from 195 to 310%. Because it is a more multiplier on your move speed, attack speed, and damage. So there's also another pair of gloves, and this is something that is kind of a new tech. It's attack speed, and it gives you adrenaline and onslaught when leech is removed by filling unreserved life. So we can fill our life super fast, especially with the instant leech. So what we do is we run blood rage, so we're always degenning, and then we can use our fast attacks to proc onslaught. Supposedly it's super, super high uptime. So we want to go here, precise technique, early game mapping. So you will see here when we go to precise technique, we have to check adrenaline. Now that's the thing. So adrenaline makes it go up by a lot of damage, and we'll see we have a more physical damage reduction too, along with more movement speed to 271%. So this is something we can use early game, and it's super, super effective. Boots. We have the stealth boots base, so you want to use evasion base for all your pieces. You can also use 3-step assault, and this does grant you 100% global evasion. But I do prefer to go with rare boots. You want life, spell suppression, resist, attributes again. Life regeneration rate is super nice because it allows you to get more rage regen. So you can see right here for the crit swap of rage setup, we have life regeneration rate. On the Eldritch Implicits, you generally want action speed as your Searing Exile. And for Eater, you can either go with ailment avoidance or life regeneration rate, or cooldown recovery with your travel skills right here. So there's a lot of different things. Eldritch Implicits, 16% increased attack and cast speed is what I generally like for mapping, and then 10% penetration if you haven't killed recently for single target. Now Amulet is another one that has a lot of different choices. There's High Reach Truth, which is very, very nice. Only downside is it doesn't have strength and int. So if you find yourself being strength and int starved, then maybe a rare amulet will be better. So with the crit swap setup, I do have High Reach in here. Saves you a gem slot. Global culling feels super nice. It has a reservation efficiency. Now later on, I also try using Yoke. Yoke is nice as it gives you the attributes. It gives you the resist, and it does make your shock a little bit better on the bosses. Now there's also the option of just using a Gate amulet with life, crit multi, resist, and attributes. Now for Anoint, there's a lot of different ones. Anoints, you can use it to fix your accuracy. You can get more crit multi. You can even use Vengeance Cascade to make the projectiles return faster. There's all sorts of different options. You just have to kind of sort it by the highest DPS and try to also fix the issues. Now, something else to keep in mind is the cost of the Anoint. If something's a golden oil versus like a silver oil or something really cheap, I would generally go for the cheaper Anoint. Now, rings are something that you usually use to fix your attributes, and there's so many different setups. So you can use your rings to get accuracy, strength, resist, craft on LA damage or flat damage. You can also use the taming, which is a lot of damage but no life. Then there's also La Hoop of All. La Hoop of All does grant you a lot of attributes. It gives you rarity, so if you can pick it up early game, it's not a bad option. Now, Belt, mostly I would use a Stygian Vise. The reason we want to use a Stygian is it allows us to use an Abyss Jewel to grant phasing on kill. So super, super nice on that part. And we do want to get regen. We're using the crit rage setup. We're not using it. We can get strength. You can craft this with an essence with strength. And then you can also get regen, or you can get resist. There's a lot of different things, but make sure to try to get life on it also. Now, the rare jewels, you can get max life on it. You can get crit strike multi. You can get LE damage of attacks, or a percent attack speed with bow skills. So you can see right here, I did put in some jewels for the later tree. And then the jewels is kind of a scenario where you have to kind of fix what you want to use. So you could use it with attributes and attack speed with bows. You can use it to fix your resist. You can use it to get more life. So it's really like a stopgap solution for any problems you might have with your build. Now for unique jewels, there are a lot of different ones. There's Lionized Fall, which converts like melee weapon type modifiers to bow modifiers. People usually put it up here and change the dagger nodes and claw nodes over. There's also Ancestral Vision, which is a way to fix your ailment immunity. So it converts all your suppression and pretty much grants you 50% ailment immunity. So you get 20% on the tree right here. And then you get 30% from your boots, whether it's through the Essence or Crafted mod or it's through the Eldritch Implicit. And then there's also the Watcher's Eye you can run. That you can use Grace Watcher's Eye, which is super good for survivability, or Anger Multi Watcher's Eye. And then there's also a Lethal Pride or Brutal Restraint over here that you can get. That gives you double damage. It gives you a lot of strength to fix the issue of your build. And there's so many different options for the unique jewels. So you just need to see what your budget is, where you are with your build in order to figure it out. So right now you can see I'm definitely trying to provide you with a framework of how to think about how to fix your character. Now, Divine Life Flask is obviously needed. This is our bleed removal. Now, utility flask, I'm running Diamond, Silver, Jade, and Quicksilver. Now, early game, you can run Quicksilver, Granite, Jade, or Sulfur. And I am not running a Diamond Flask with Precise Technique because we don't need crit. Now, the nice part about taking this Flask Mastery is because the duration is longer, we have high uptime on our Flask. I do prefer to go with Alchemist Flask, and also a nice part about Alchemist Flask is if you're alt rolling for these, you can actually get a flask that's worth 1 or 2 divines down the line, because these are the flasks that people use with Mage Blood. So it's super, super nice to try to roll some of these yourself, and you could potentially make a lot of money down the line. Now for suffixes, we want percent attack speed, percent move speed, percent evasion, percent critical strike chance, and you can also use percent reduced effective shock if you have no ailment immunity yet. Now, enchant, we want to use charges reach full so that you can just be never having to press your flask. And something to keep in mind is if you're trying to boss with the build, this build doesn't really have much regen. So when you don't have any regen, the only way to fix it is to run more Divine Life Flask, and there's no shame in doing that. You can drop your Jade Flask, you can drop your, Quicksilver Flask maybe, and run 3 Life Flasks, and you can survive the ball phase, you can survive the intermission on either of worlds a lot better. And it just comes down to what you want, what content you're trying to do. Now, I do know this video is a little bit long. I did try to explain everything very, very clearly about the different options you have. Now, keep in mind this build is squishy, but it's not that squishy in the sense that you're not going to be dying all the time as long as you can get your evasion rating to a nice level. Now, this is a very, very important thing, is that 95% evade or 90% evade feels really, really nice. And especially if you can utilize Dread Banner to get it, like 93%, you will realize that you rarely ever get hit. And when you do get hit, like 4.5k life is generally enough to kind of survive. The armor is obviously very low, so you are vulnerable to big fizz hits, and it does have 100% spell suppression. This build is not that squishy, but is definitely nowhere near as tanky as a Bone Shatter Juggernaut, something with Fortify, something with a shield, something with multiple defensive layers of elusive also. Now, it's important to understand the PoB configuration. A lot of people think that people would jabait people with the PoB config, but you can't be jabaited if you understand what the config actually means. So power charges, you get this from your Mana Forge Arrow, Frenzy from the Mana Forge Arrow, Gale Force is from your Ascendancy, Onslaught from your Flask if you have it, Adrenaline. Now this is something that is only should be checked if you're using the Tanu Ahi gloves in the crit swap setup. And here we have the Rage. This is something you could play around with, 35 Rage, 25. Usually I just average it out, put 35, 25. Your Rage should be generally always on if you're running the Rage setup with Comb Spirit. Have you killed recently? You can put this in for the boots. It doesn't really matter. Resonance, this is used for Trinity. So 50 should always be put in. Projectile travel distance, you get damage from it for our far shot. You also get it from the bow mastery of arrows increase critical strike chance. So if you want to see what it is, if you're next to the mob, it's a lot lower. So you kind of need to stand far away from the mob. And is the enemy blinded, you can put this in. And this is only, this should never be checked. So ignited, you have some fire damage to ignite. Chilled, the cold damage will be chilled. And shocked, 15 is a very generous estimate generally. I think if you're using yoke, it's going to be a lot higher than 15. And I only have those checked because yoke gains a damage bonus for each ailment you inflict. And the boss or mob should have ignite, chill, and shock. So once you understand all of that, make sure that Guardian Pinnacle boss is checked. Some people like to put standard boss, and it does increase your damage a lot. Another thing to understand is how do attack-based crit builds work. And you really want to make sure your hit chance is at 100%. And you want to understand that this stuff needs to be balanced. So crit multi and crit chance. The more crit multi you have, the less valuable it will be. The more flat elemental damage attacks you have, the less valuable the additional flat elemental damage will be. So it's just the law of diminishing returns. There are a lot of different gearing options. I did try to provide it. So every single thing, if you see the item is super, super expensive, try to look for a different option. There's always going to be a cheaper alternative with this setup and build because there's so many different gearing options. There's so many unique jewels. There's also, you can even run a cluster. And lastly, there's the question about what about Omni? Every single lightning arrow build guide creator I've seen has not recommended Omni, and I'm not really recommending it right away, purely because tattoos is going to make Omni a lot worse. And also, the build is strong enough where you don't really need Omni right now. And it does allow you to transition to the best Magic Find build and probably the best overall Sanctum build, which is Tornado Shot, Tornado Shot Deadeye. And Tornado Shot this time is going to outscale Lightning Arrow towards the end. Hopefully this video has helped you out a lot. I did try to go over most of the stuff very thoroughly. And I do think if you have any trouble, just check it out. Message me in my Discord. People will help you out. Main thing is make sure to choose the corresponding right tree. So crit swap rage and also crit swap rage here. And then make sure the config is correct. And I did try to teach you about how the config actually works. But thanks for watching, everyone. I do hope you try to choose Lightning Arrow. It's not the tankiest build, but it's definitely the fastest build by quite a bit. But thanks for watching, everyone. And see you next time. Bye.